Hey, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Katella Chronicles podcast with your host, Dominick Lorenz, and of course, David Goodkind in the house. David, winter meetings are done, and there's a lot of baseball news on the horizon. How you doing?
Catching my breath. It was a crazy couple of days, like we all expected. It was a really active winter meetings. I'm excited for the off season and then inevitably jumping into the spring training. So it's been a lot. I love that baseball is kind of like a yearly sport with really no break. So been enjoying it, to say the least.
Absolutely. Now, there, of course, was some deals that happened before the winter meetings opened this past Sunday, and the Angels were a part of many of them with signing left-handed starting pitcher Tyler Anderson. They pulled off a trade to get Gio Urshela. They also pulled off another trade to get outfielder Hunter Renfroe. So the Angels made some moves before the winter meetings. They did make one move at the winter meetings. We'll get to that in just a moment. But the amount of money that went flying at the winter meetings this year reminisced a little bit of 2019 when Garrett Cole got a big deal from the Yankees, Anthony Rendon got his big contract from the Angels, Steven Strasburg with the Washington Nationals. It's been a couple years since a normal winter meetings has happened because of the COVID pandemic and a couple other different elements that have gone on, especially last year with the MLB lockout. So this was the first winter meetings of old that it felt like normal once again. Players being signed. There's a few trades that went on before the winter meetings. Baseball just felt normal. And like you said, it's a year-round sport. If we're not playing games, there's moves that are to be made. Everybody's trying to get better leading into 2023, and the Angels are that. So let's first get to the Angels' one and only deal that they made in the winter meetings, and it was for a relief pitcher. 2 years, $14 million for Carlos Estevez. He played all 6 years of his career in a very tough park at Coors Field with the Colorado Rockies. Overall, not too bad of numbers, but he's got a lot of back end of the bullpen experience. And that's somewhere where GM Perry Manassian really wanted to emphasize this offseason. The Angels traded away Raisel Iglesias at the trade deadline last season. They got Aaron Loup, they got Ryan Tepera, they got Jimmy Herget right now. Add Estevez into the mix, and the Angels bullpen is looking a little more complete at this point. So for Estevez in mind, what do you like about the deal? Again, it's 2 years, $14 million for a bullpen piece.
Yeah, it's smart money. The numbers don't pop out, which is always nice with relievers because you never know what you're really going to get. It's hard to kind of predict. It seems like a reliever can be great one season and then not so great the next. I'm looking at Raisel Iglesias a little bit there. It's a team-friendly contract. It's not too much money. It's movable if they need to move it. If he's awesome and they use the full extent of his contract, then it's not eating up too much of the payroll.
And the Angels payroll, it's a great segue where you say payroll, because for years the Angels have been willing to spend, but they've never completely gone overboard, gone over the luxury tax and spent more than most of the time. It's been averaging around 170 to 180 million is that average for an Artie Moreno owned team. Now, again, fans, let's remember, Artie Moreno is currently in process of selling this team. We heard from Rob Manfred, commissioner of Major League Baseball, that it's looking unlikely that it could happen before opening day. Again, an announcement can be made, but the process of the transition could take a couple of months to get the new ownership in, start the new regime, and so on and so forth. But speaking of money, the Angels last year on opening day had around $180 million on the payroll. What do the Angels currently have on the payroll as of right now with the additions of Renfroe, Anderson, Urshela, and now Estevez? Well, now the money is pushing towards $200 million at $198 million on the payroll. So looking at it from a payroll stance, what do we like about the Angels spending money this offseason thus far? And I think it deals with the word quality at this point with the Angels free agent / trade market that they've attained so far from GM Perry Manassian.
Well, about a month ago, we talked about, ending a podcast. I brought up to a plea to Perry to say, get major league ready players. And this is what a payroll will look like when you have 3 players making as much as Ohtani, Trout, and Rendon collectively. It's going to balloon a little bit, even if you're not, surrounded by a bunch of all-star talented players like the Padres or the Mets or the Phillies are. it's still going to balloon up there just because those three guys by themselves. And it should, because you want to surround these guys with talent that deserves to be at that level, that's producing, that creates that depth that we've been talking about. It really is a sign of a healthier ball club. Let's put it that way. You don't have as many holes, you don't have as many worries as you do going into the season, unless these guys completely regress. But I'm on board with you. I like these signings. I think they're pretty smart. I think these are good players that are really going to help the team.
Absolutely. And GM Perry Manassian was on MLB Network a couple nights ago. They were talking about the state of the Angels, where they were going, and all these moves that we have already mentioned already. And I was telling David before we started recording this podcast, I was sitting in front of the TV with my checklist out. He addressed having some problems with depth last year. Check. He addressed some issues with the coaching staff. Check. He addressed some issues just overall with this team not performing to the capabilities that they should have, at least on paper. So Manassian is saying the right things right now, and so far he's doing the right things as a general manager, even with the threat of Artie Moreno selling this organization off to a new owner. It's business as usual, and so far quality has overtaken quantity for the Angels thus far. I like all the moves that they've done so far, and the payroll really doesn't, in my mind, I'm not a GM, but payroll doesn't really affect me as much. If you want to spend the money, you're going to spend the money, and you're going to pay the extra luxury tax at whatever cost it will be. If you're the Yankees, the Padres, the Dodgers, whoever you are. The Angels are a quality organization that will spend money. They will never be in full-blown rebuild mode, kind of like the Detroit Tigers, the Kansas City Royals, or teams at the bottom of the American League or National League standings. So when you're looking at it from an Angels perspective, offseason so far, if I had to give it a grade, a strong B+, if not an A-. There is still work to be done. Don't get me wrong. The shortstop is the biggest market, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But to give you a big update on what's been going on at the winter meetings, David and I have compiled a list of all the big signings that have happened. We're going to start with a couple in the National League, and it's funny to say this. Some signees that have happened already kind of play into the Angels' mindset a little bit, because there were some players that signed, and we end up finding out that the Angels had conversations with these players that we didn't know about. Were they fits? Were they not? And it kind of tells the tale of how much money or where the direction is the Angels are looking at. So let's kind of put it in perspective. Let's get some numbers on the table. The New York Mets, and I think the NL East, David, you can agree or disagree with this one. The NL East is going to be a very interesting and fun division to watch going into 2023, yes or no?
Oh, absolutely.
Look what the first New York Mets did. 2 years, $86 million for Justin Verlander. Huge money, $43 million a year. Steve Cohen's got money coming out of his ears. Good for the Mets. They just signed Brandon Nimmo, their star outfielder, for 8 years, $162 million. And then they signed reliever David Robertson, 1 year, $10 million. How did the Philadelphia Phillies within their division counter? Well, Trey Turner, 11 years, $300 million. You can knock one shortstop off the market. And they signed starting pitcher Taijuan Walker, 4 years, $72 million. Starting off with that, we talked about this internally about years over average annual value. So more so looking at Trey Turner, and I know we're going to talk about another shortstop in a moment that signed with the Padres late last night. What is your thoughts about the high years that players are getting right now in this offseason over the AAV per year?
I think it works out better for all parties involved, and for multiple reasons. One, especially for shortstop, your body may fail you a little bit later. You could get hurt. This protects you for over a decade, right? And you're getting really good money. Next, you have the team has financial flexibility. And as we've seen, the luxury tax may continue to increase in terms of that threshold, that you may get more room for teams to operate as the years go by, making that contract hit even less of a burden. And then also it gives that team more financial flexibility to help their acquired stars and put talent around them as those years progress. So I think overall, these smaller AAVs but longer years, it really does help out all parties involved. And I'm surprised that it's taken this long for everyone to kind of see it, that you don't hamstring a team that you just joined, and you give yourself that financial stability well into your 40s. So I think it's the right play for players and teams at the moment.
Absolutely. And the key word in all of that is deferred money. These organizations want to defer the money as long as they can so they don't have to pay for it up front. That's okay if you're, again, these big market teams like the Yankees, like the Red Sox, Padres, Angels, Dodgers, so on and so forth, that are highly competitive and making these moves already this offseason. The funny thing about it is you mentioned about getting to the age 40 plus season. Trey Turner, when he finishes his 11-year deal with the Phillies, he's going to be 40 years old. We were all worried when Albert Pujols at 30 signs the 10-year deal and he's going to be 40 at the end of his contract. So it's interesting to see now the next generation of Major League Baseball stars getting these whopping 8, 9, 10, if not 11-year deals that are going to be playing well into their 40s with their new representation. Because I remember a couple years ago at the winter meetings, the biggest trademark of these deals was the opt-out clause. Oh, they sign a 10-year deal, opt out after the third, but then everything after that is guaranteed. Now we're seeing, as we mentioned, more years that are full no trade clause guaranteed years with a lesser AAV, or at least a deferred AAV. So it's interesting to see how the business of baseball has shifted. In a way, I kind of think you can really thank Mike Trout for that. And I know that's a long stretch coming from us Angel fans, but Mike Trout was really one of the first players of this new era that said, hey, I'm signing basically a lifetime contract to stay with the Angels. It's going to have a full no trade clause. I'm going to get my years, I'm going to get my AAV, and I'm going to be in one place so I don't have to hear the noise of I got to get traded. Bryce Harper then follows by getting a full no trade clause to the Philadelphia Phillies. And now we're seeing that trend carry out through the same / next generation of baseball stars. It's very interesting to see. And I think we really get that extra with the big signing last night after the San Diego Padres whiffed on Aaron Judge, who they did offer at least 10 years for, and Trey Turner, who they offered 10 years for. They end up getting it right on the third try by getting 11 years for Xander Bogaerts. Bogaerts, for all intents and purposes, we thought was going to the Boston Red Sox. We thought he was staying there, that they were ready to roll. Instead, 11 years, $280 million. Bogaerts is coming to the Padres that already has a very crowded infield with Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., and Hong Sung Kim and Jake Cronenworth. And don't forget, they have Juan Soto for the next 2 years as well. The Padres, David, have become now major players in the free agent market. They've said, screw the farm system, we're going all in. Do you like what the Padres are doing? Do you dislike what the Padres are doing? How can we conceive what the Padres are doing? Because again, less than 5 years ago, the Padres were a laughingstock in the National League West.
I love what the Padres are doing, and I'll tell you why. And I'll relate it back to the Angels in this point. The Angels, historically over Mike Trout's tenure at least, they go out and they get the big star, and then they cry broke afterwards. They don't put anyone else around them, and then you have 2 or 3 guys who can really hit, and then the lineup is wishy-washy, or they don't have enough pitchers in the rotation, or they let the bullpen slack, whatever. They go, they put their foot in like halfway into the door, and then the other half they stay out. The Padres are saying, we have generational talent. We're not going to waste our generational talent. We acknowledge our window, and we will pay whatever we need to pay to get this thing done to be as most competitive as we possibly can. The Angels have been kind of like wavered on that. They're like, well, we'll try with what we have. It's like, no, you've already wasted 10 years of Mike Trout now, and this is the reality that we're looking at. The Padres are going the complete opposite direction. They're looking at the Angels and saying, if you don't keep spending, if you start spending and you stop, that's not enough. You're not going to compete with the Dodgers. You're not going to compete with the other wild card teams, the division, the Giants. You have to keep it going. You have to stay consistent with it, and you have to keep pushing if you want to keep that window open. So in that respect, are they going to be dead in the water in a decade? Maybe. Yeah, maybe this will backfire. But they acknowledge their window. we acknowledge the window as outsiders to the team. That this is their best shot. They have a heck of a team right now, and you have to be going for it. And they are. They're committed to doing that. And it's not my money. It's not the Padres fans' money. You have to commend them for honestly putting their best foot forward and trying to win. Isn't that what the sport's about? It's like you play to win the game, right? So the Padres are definitely all in, and they're trying. And I will never bash a team that's trying.
And their series victory against the Dodgers in the postseason this past year, I don't think contributes to them spending money, because they were spending money even before, leading into what we thought at the time, the 2019 offseason, before the pandemic 2020 season.
They started with the Hosmer deal, really.
They started with the Hosmer. Yes. And then they went to big sign Manny Machado before the resurgence of the Padres. And then Fernando Tatis came up, and you knew something special was going on in San Diego. And then they just kind of steamrolled slowly but surely, revamping their pitching staff. And now they're getting the big supporting offensive players that are making them a contending team. And on paper right now, I would have to say they are the favorites in the NL West. Even though the Dodgers are still there, the Dodgers have a lot of subtractions to their roster right now. And shockingly, they didn't make a single major move, I should say, at this winter meetings. So it's interesting to see how the National League West has shifted a little bit. And I agree with you 100% of the way. The Padres are doing it right, in my opinion. Could it backfire in maybe 7 to 10 years when these guys start to fall off and get a little bit older and their window starts closing? We'll see when we get there. But if they have a ring or two to represent what they've done right now, I think all parties will say it's worth it at this point. Now, looking at Bogaerts and looking at Trey Turner, 2 of the major 4 shortstops are now off the market. Carlos Correa, Dansby Swanson are remaining. And if you want to put a tier B shortstop into the conversation, Gene Segura would be the next one up. So the shortstop market is shrinking. There's a lot of teams that want a shortstop, the Angels being one of them. You also have heard rumors about the Minnesota Twins, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the San Francisco Giants. The Angels, we've talked about how they need more. They've done well so far, but they still need to get more, especially with competition in the NL East right now. Surprise, surprise. Here's a little foreshadowing breaking news. Aaron Judge is still a Yankee. He signs a massive 9-year deal to stay with the Bronx Bombers. The Boston Red Sox made some moves getting Kenley Jansen for the bullpen, and they go out and get the star outfielder Yoshida from Japan. So the Red Sox are getting better. The Blue Jays aren't going anywhere. Tampa Bay is always pesky. The Baltimore Orioles, they had a great year last year. Who knows what can happen with them? And guess what? The American League West Division is even tougher. The Astros go out and get Jose Abreu to a 3-year deal. That's massive for them. The Mariners are stronger. Texas just got Jacob deGrom. They're stronger. And there sit the Angels. It's not going to be easy sledding for the Angels as we hope for, like last season, where we thought, hey, the window's a little bit open with that extra wild card spot. Guess what? You're going to need 3 swords in this fight to battle some massive dragons in the American League. So, shortstop market. You have been a huge fan of Carlos Correa for the last 2 off seasons.
Yes.
I myself was not a fan 2 years ago, and I think that had a little bit to do with the whole Houston Astros scandal. But I will say yet again today, I'm over it. It happened. I kind of want Carlos Correa to be an Angel at this point. It's hard fathomably to say it. Like, you would have thought Carlos Correa was going to be an Astro for life at a couple years ago. He's a free agent once again after spending 1 year with the Minnesota Twins. Carlos Correa, doesn't he kind of have to be an Angel at this point if the Angels want to find a way to keep Shohei Ohtani as well as stay competitive and be competitive in this American League?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a domino effect. And he's kind of like the centerpiece. Everyone keeps talking about how desperate the Giants are because after missing out on Judge and, the NOS is so competitive at the top right now. I think the Angels are kind of in a similar spot. You look at the AL East right now. Let's assume the Red Sox don't take a huge setback, which they may still. That whole division's better than the Angels. The Orioles are on an upward trajectory, and that was the bottom of that class. And if they're continue to get better, then that just makes it that much more difficult. The Mariners proved last season they're legit. Texas is trying. Like I said about the Padres, I don't think Texas is going to be as successful as the Padres, but they're trying.
They're
and I'll
trying.
hand that to them.
A
They are
for
trying.
effort.
They're making some head scratching decisions sometimes, and they don't mind staying old. But they're trying. They brought in Bruce Bochy, and they're giving it their best shot. And then the Astros are just going to be the Astros for a long time. They're going to be really, really good. They're probably going to win the division by double digits again.
God help us.
And then there has to be a team from the Central. And the Guardians deserved it last year, but it could be the White Sox. You never know. So the Angels are kind of behind the 8 ball here. You have to really make that big move to move the needle, and you have to move the needle this season. This season also is dependent, on if they can retain Ohtani. He wants to be with the winner. If the Angels can make the playoffs and show him that they're serious, by all accounts, he likes playing here. And if he sees that they have a winning team in place, there's a lot of reasons for him to stick around. So it's all this whole domino effect. I think you need a player of Carlos Correa's caliber. And he creates that mega depth. It's like Luis Rengifo, who a lot of people are penciling in as a starting opening day player. You could bring him off the bench, and then you have quality coming off the bench, and it's just this huge domino effect. I think Carlos Correa really changes the narrative about this season and about the Angels' future, especially when it comes to Ohtani.
100%. A lot of things with the Angels right now completely hinge on Shohei Ohtani. And that's extremely difficult for especially GM Perry Manassian, because you're sitting here saying we need to improve this team now, but at the same time, we don't want to completely, fully hamstring ourselves if we have to go out and re-sign Shohei Ohtani to a huge, massive contract. So you're kind of in a wiggle room of, we need good players, we need to keep Ohtani, but we also have to keep in the back of our mind, we need to save a little bit for later when Ohtani comes to play.
That's the rub, right? Because if they crap the bed again this season, he's going to have competitive bidders. Like it's going to be hard to sell the Angels over like the Dodgers.
At this point, absolutely.
But if the Angels make the playoffs, they show that they have a really good team, a good infrastructure. They have like a guy like Carlos Correa for the next 10 years, who's still young, mind you. That deal wouldn't be nearly as bad as some of the Hamilton one or the Pujols one, where Pujols could have been older than he reported.
So they say.
But you have older guys. You have a 28-year-old coming in who is a heck of a ball player. So, and also, let's say you lose Ohtani no matter what, then you have a Carlos Correa there as a safety net. Going into next offseason, where it's pretty barren for position players especially, you lose Ohtani. Like, you can't replace that, even close with next year's free agent class. So you basically have a down year unless you hit gold within the farm system, and I'm not really expecting that to turn around within the next few years. I hope the new ownership kind of recognizes how important that is, but that's still going to take time. It does bind money, but you also have to hope the next owner coming in also is ready to pull a Steve Cohen and just say, screw the luxury tax. Here's the money we need necessary to win, to compete. I think you have to throw caution to the wind at this point when it comes to, well, this may deter them from signing Ohtani. I'm like, you're the Angels. You still make a lot of money. Pay the luxury tax if you have to, but you have to have the pieces in place. Otherwise, it's all hypothetical, and he's gone after the team misses the playoffs again.
If the Angels spend money, I will say this: they will be okay. They're not losing. Yes. They're not going to be godforsaken broke if they go after one massive player. That revenues extremely well.
Right. And I keep saying this, it's not our money. It's like, if the owner's taking a tax hit, who cares?
Yeah.
Let him take the tax.
Rich people can pay for it.
Yes. Let the billionaires pay the money. It's like people get all up in arms about we can't get this player because he costs too much. I'm like, who cares? It's not your money. You're not paying for Mike Trout's contract. I mean, you are kind of with your hot dogs and beer and your parking, but like, that's it.
But
that's
chump change. That's chump change to these billionaires. They don't care.
Yes, they don't care.
And the Angels have been very willing to spend money this offseason. The one thing I will say that if I'm Shohei Ohtani, the only thing so far this offseason that scares me a little bit with my future with the Angels is the 2 trades that they made were single-year deals. Gio Urshela and Hunter Renfroe only have 1 year left on their contract, so they're not guaranteed a spot into the following season with the Angels. So the Angels could essentially just have 1 year rentals, and then Ohtani saying, oh, I love those guys. Never mind, we're not bringing him back. We got to start this all again. That's something where a nice Carlos Correa 5-6 year deal, or maybe an 8 year deal with, he loves his opt-out clauses. So maybe an 8 year deal with an opt-out after the 3rd year that keeps you competitive for a couple of seasons. You can work around that. And again, that's the business of baseball. I will let Perry Manassian's mind go wild with that. Again, like David said, it's not our money. We don't care. We're just making conversation at this point, but we want the Angels to be better. We want Shohei Ohtani to have something that says, I want to be here. And so far, I feel the Angels aren't there yet. They're on the right trajectory, but somebody like a Carlos Correa that's a thump in the middle of the order that can support a lineup that has Trout, Rendon, Ohtani, David Fletcher, Jared Walsh when healthy, Taylor Ward, now Hunter Renfroe. That would be a very potent lineup to have in an addition of Carlos Correa to the mix. Absolutely. I think David and I can agree on this one. We value Carlos Correa more than we do Dansby Swanson. Even though Dansby Swanson is getting more, I guess you could say, recognition of maybe he would go to the Angels over Correa going to the Angels in the media.
I think it's a silly argument. It's like, oh, because Perry Manassian, there's that tie. I'm like, that's really not how any of this works. It's the money. It's how comfortable are you in the actual like physical location. Manassian's an Angel. He's not a Brave anymore.
Yeah, you're grasping at straws, I think, at that point. I think that's how it goes down, because you could say that about a lot of these people. Perry Manassian is not the only general manager or even front office person in baseball that hasn't been in the sport of baseball for 30 plus years. Manassian knows so many people. He knows players' fathers. He knows players' uncles. Just because he might know Dansby Swanson's father doesn't mean Dansby Swanson's coming to the Angels. But we gotta remember that baseball is a big family, and it's crazy to think Chris Young, the GM for the Texas Rangers, used to be a player. There are players in the league that he played with at a certain point. That doesn't mean he's bringing them to the Texas Rangers. No. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on the Swanson because of Manassian to Atlanta conversation. Excuse me, Roger Lodge today on the Sports Line. But not to throw anybody under the bus, but let's be honest for a second. But looking at the shortstop market, it is an interesting case. We've said it all along. Rengifo had a fantastic 2022 season, and the Angels still have David Fletcher, who looked very good once he got healthy. So you do have a juggling to do in the infield spot. But I think Carlos Correa could be a piece that the Angels are missing, that the Angels haven't really got that formidable bat as a free agent signing. I guess you could say since Anthony Rendon, but Rendon hasn't panned out extremely well. When was the last time they struck gold with a free agent or even a trade? You can maybe have a conversation with Andrelton Simmons, but it kind of fizzled out at the end. You could maybe say Mark Teixeira, but Teixeira was a rental. The Angels,
he got us Mike Trout though. So
he got us Mike Trout.
Yeah, that was a worthy deal.
So it's very interesting to see where the Angels have, maybe hit a foul ball, but then you could also see where they've swung and missed at some infielders. I feel Carlos Correa at 28 years old, you give him an 8+ year deal with maybe an opt-out halfway through. I feel that's a win-win scenario. You're looking at the deals we already mentioned, the high years, but the less AAV. If the Angels could get that, but again, throw in that opt-out in the mix. Correa loves his opt-outs. I'm just saying that, and I don't fully remember. I think he's a Scott Boras client.
Yeah.
So I know Boras and the Angels don't have that great rapport, but hey, Artie Moreno is spending money right now. All right, let me rephrase that. Perry Manassian is spending money because guess what? Artie Moreno might not have to sign the checks on opening day. He might give it to somebody else. So Artie, if there's something good in this world right now, it's Artie Moreno selling a team and willing to spend the money because he knows he doesn't have to pay the check later out. He's that guy that's going to do the dine and dash at a very famous steakhouse. So
happy with that.
I'm
I'm
happy
happy
with
with
that.
that.
If it works out that way, I am all for that. And if it all equates to winning baseball and somehow, some way, Shohei Ohtani re-signing with the Angels, 100%, I'm on board with that. That's where the Angels need to play right now. Now, there's some interesting conversations regarding the Angels. One comes from a deal that didn't even deal with the Angels. It was catcher Wilson Contreras signing a 5-year, $87.5 million deal with the St. Louis Cardinals. Congratulations to them. They replaced their Hall of Faming catcher in Yadier Molina with a terrific stud in Wilson Contreras. Funny thing was, a couple hours after he signs, the rumors and the reports come out that the Angels matched or nearly matched that offer with the St. Louis Cardinals, and they still have 2 years remaining on Max Stassi. And they have Logan O'Hoppe, who is this prized possession that they got for Brandon Marsh at the trade deadline. And there's a lot of hope in him moving forward. So I think Contreras, in my opinion, David, is another example of the Angels are willing to spend. And it is true what Perry Manassian is saying. We are going to upgrade this team at any position we can. We don't care what's out there. The only person that has a solidified spot that we're not trying to help is Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. So if it's a first baseman, great. If it's a catcher, great. If it's an infielder, great. It doesn't matter at this point. And let's be real. The Angels have been linked to Japanese superstar Kodai Senga, who is a terrific pitcher that could complement this starting rotation. And I think the Angels right now have one spot up for grabs. So some mystery with the Angels right now. I wasn't expecting Contreras. I feel that's an interesting point. I think I want to focus on the storyline of being in the rumor mill for the starting pitcher from Japan, Senga. Him and Shohei Ohtani were friends. They have that Japanese. Adding another foreign international player to the Angels market would not only up the value to a new owner, it would up the value to sign more free agents because ka-ching, more money to your payroll. What do you think the chances are that the Angels go out and get Senga?
He's talked about how he wants to go to a winner. So he has to be convinced the Angels are winners. But I think the Angels will make a really competitive offer. They do have a really nice rotation as is. He fit in nicely. Of course, you have the Ohtani factor. I don't know the likelihood. I know it's a competitive market, and so that brings down the likelihood not just for the Angels, but for everyone else in that market. You know, it's a rumor that hasn't died. There's obviously some seriousness coming from the Angels front office about it, and they looks like they really want him. It kind of depends on what the next move is. If the Angels go out and shock the world and go get like a Carlos Correa, that may take them out of the running for Senga. So it's kind of like a wait and see kind of deal. And same with the other teams. It's, you know, the Mets have been spending a lot. I know they really want him. They really, really want him, but how competitive an offer are they ready to make after signing all those big contracts earlier in the week? So it's very much a wait and see. I know the Angels probably really want him because they would have to spend $42 million a year on a pitcher like Senga and still get really quality innings from him. You know, what we saw with Contreras and what I'm assuming is going on behind the scenes is the Angels are being regressive with these quality players. So I would take this rumor seriously personally. And it's just kind of watching how the rest of this offseason plays out. And it's not just the Angels. It's, like I said, it's the other teams and see what their next move is. And if that takes them out of the running, and then that makes it easier for the Angels. So I wouldn't say go buy your Angels Senga jersey right now. I think that's a little premature.
Not quite
but,
yet.
I think they have a legitimate shot, personally.
Absolutely. I'm right on board. I think, in my opinion, I've always thought the Angels have had a good shot at Senga. The reason being, the Angels always do an extremely good job as an organization, internationally scouting and internationally going after players. And I'm not just saying that because, well, we landed Shohei Ohtani and it's worked out for us pretty well, I would say. They just have a good rapport with the international market. So that's a positive in their direction. What a positive that I see in Senga, not just being a terrific pitcher, there's a difference between him and the outfielder Yoshida that signed with the Red Sox. Yoshida had a $10 million posting fee. that the Red Sox have to pay. So essentially, instead of that deal being 5 for 80, it's going to be 5 for 90. Senga does not have a posting fee. So essentially, any team that gets Senga will save $10 million. So right there, that's a benefit, not just to the Angels, but of course to any team that signs him. But I think it's a great move for the Angels because that's, again, $10 million that could go to a potential shortstop like Carlos Correa or whoever they want to sign another relief pitcher or make a trade or whatever the Manassian wants to do. And I think it would, in a way, entice Shohei Ohtani to stay a little bit. He has some familiarity with Senga. They're friends. They've talked a lot. They're going to probably be, I don't know if Senga has confirmed he's going to be on Team Japan for the World Baseball Classic, but if he does end up playing, Ohtani and him are going to be teammates once again. So that could be a personal reason for Shohei to stay. He's got a friend. He's got a compadre in the starting rotation. They can work off each other. And as a fan, that's quite a 1-2 punch in the Angels starting rotation. You got Ohtani, Senga, and let's not forget, Patrick Sandoval has been terrific. Reed Detmers is on the right track. And the Angels continue to get better in the starting rotation with the addition of Tyler Anderson. So that 6th spot is up for grabs right now. It could go to Senga. Maybe we re-sign Michael Lorenz. Who knows? But I think Senga would really send the Angels in the right direction and to prove to other free agents, Carlos Correa, if you're listening right now, and Shohei Ohtani, this is a team that wants to win. And they're not going to wait anymore. They're not going to trust the development of talent going on in the minor league system, even though the minor league system for the Angels took a step in the right direction this season. We saw it throughout every level of minor league ball. Yes, that's great, but there's still a lot of question marks, and the Angels have a lot of depth of pitching in the minor league system, but they're not quite ready yet. I would say, on average, Angel pitchers in the minor league system are a good 2 to 3 years away from being competitive. I want to develop these players right, just like Logan O'Hoppe. I don't want to rush him to the major league level here in 2023 and say, okay, let's go be an all-star. We still have 2 years of Max Stassi left, even though, let's be real, Stassi had an awful 2022 campaign. I don't think anybody could debate that. The best moments he had was probably catching for Shohei Ohtani because they just have that good rapport. So in regards of the development versus let's get some star-making talent, Correa and Senga, especially Senga, I'm going to take those rumors to be legitimate. And the only team, in my opinion, that can compete with the Angels right now in getting Senga is going to be the San Diego Padres. We've talked about them earlier here in the show. They have a blueprint that is ready to ball out and play. They want to spend money. They're spending it now. They're taking nobody for granted, and they want to jump on this opportunity that sees the Dodgers struggling a little bit, and they want to jump. So the Padres could be in that mix for Senga as well, but I think
it sounds like the Mets also really, really want him.
Correct. They would be the other team, I think, that would really go after, and you would think it's funny to think, oh, they just spent $43 million a year for Justin Verlander. That's not stopping him from anything right now. Steve Cohen has got money, and he is willing, and especially with Jacob deGrom leaving, they do have an open ace spot that didn't include Justin Verlander a couple weeks ago. So Billy Epler and Steve Cohen, Billy Epler brought Shohei Ohtani to Anaheim. Who says he can't bring Senga to Queens? It's a very interesting, perplexing situation to have here in the free agent market. But there's a lot to talk about, and there was a lot of free agent things that happened overall. David, I know you have some thoughts where the Angels organization is going, and I know we've touched upon it here and there, but I'm going to give you the floor for a second. And where do you think the Angels need to be ownership-wise going forward? Because I know there's been rumors about potentially the Golden State Warriors owner could be an Angel owner. We really haven't heard any other rumors going on with the Angels sale. So where do you think the Angels organization is right now as we record this December the 8th? Where is the Angels organization right now besides seeing a willingness to spend so far this offseason?
It's an interesting topic to consider because you mentioned, that the team is signifying that they want to win. Let's pretend Artie doesn't really care and he doesn't want to win. The next ownership who comes in is going to be spending over $2 billion. They're going to want to win. They want to return on their investment. There'll be no doubt that they want to win to future free agents, players, coaches, whatever, the fans. You'll know that the next ownership coming in is serious. That being said, creating those good habits now and putting the infrastructure into place, you can kind of get a jump start in that winning culture for the next ownership, make life a little bit easier, maybe up the value of the sale. They still have time to do that because nothing's been finalized. You bring a Carlos Correa onto the roster or like a Dansby Swanson, you get a nice solid piece for the new ownership. I know people are talking about how that's going to hamstring an Ohtani signing. I think it just raises the value of the franchise. You have more really good players. You have a team that you know is at least going to be competitive. I think that's what it comes down to. It's just you got to try. You have Mike Trout and Ohtani for this season, and assuming a healthy Rendon, a top end rotation, like if you write this down on paper, that's kind of the recipe for a window, right? Of competition. Your problem is the competition around you has a lot of similar windows right now. So the front office right now is doing all the right things, but their work cannot be done. If they're serious about competing this upcoming season, you have to get that big fish or you have to get some more pieces. But for the long-term success in not just this season, but next season, it would help if the front office gave them a little parting gift.
The Angels need to be at least jogging, and I'm going to use a little metaphor here. The Angels cannot be a statue when the new ownership comes in. If you're a statue, that means the new ownership has a lot of work to do to get this team in competitive fashion. If Manassian and Artie Moreno as a like you said, a goodwill gesture can get this team at least jogging in the right direction and maybe just starting to sprint a little bit, and all the new ownership has to do is add a piece or two here and there, and we're off and running, that's going to be a better transition than, okay, this is where the team is. We're going to dead stop here. We're going to freeze it, switch ownership, and now take it from here. You want to carry that baton like an Olympic track race. You want the forward momentum going in the right direction. And the Angels will always have forward momentum, regardless of their record. We've already said this earlier, and we've said this, I think, forever. The Angels will never be an organization that goes into full 100% rebuild mode, sell all your pieces off, we're going to start from scratch and burn it down. The Angels they're not the highest market in baseball. They're not the Yankees. They're not the Dodgers, but they're right under that. They're like the little brother. They're almost there, but they can't quite get there. So if you can get the organization in a jogging, wannabe sprint type motion, I feel that, I think, is even more important than already being A+ ready to go when a new owner comes into this organization.
Let's put things into perspective. Look a couple hours down south. The Padres in San Diego are technically a pretty small market comparative to many other markets in Major League Baseball. The Angels are significantly bigger.
Yes.
And the Padres are doing what they're doing. Why can't the Angels?
I don't remember what organization, I think, was it during the playoffs? It might have been the Phillies, or forgive me if I'm wrong here, but the tagline was, why not us? Why not us go to the playoffs? Why not us go win the World Series? Why not us
for years past, the answer was Artie Moreno.
Yes.
Let's be real for a second. But he is no longer that big factor. So here's your opportunity, Perry, to not only better the team and really set it up for some success this season and beyond, but to prove that to the new ownership, like, hey, I'm your guy. You don't need a new GM when you take over. I'm already here. This is a big opportunity for Perry Manassian himself to really step into the spotlight and usher this team into the new era.
Yes, 100% with you on that one. I feel every time Perry Manassian says it's business as usual, I believe him, because you still got to do your job. The world and time does not stop because there's a possible impending sale of this organization. But at the same time, in the very back of Perry Manassian's mind, is he worried about his job a little bit with new ownership? Don't tell me he doesn't want to puff his chest out a little bit and say, look what I did that was successful.
He should be worried.
He should be. After the disaster of the last 2 seasons, let's be real. The last 2 seasons was a disaster. 2021 was more so because of death-defying injuries to core players like Trout and Rendon. Last year was more, yes, there was some injuries, but it was just, you just dropped down and just collapsed.
We were talking about this. We were talking about this in the offseason where
yes,
there was a lack of depth.
100%.
We're not GMs, but we saw it, and we went into the season with like one injury, and that's it for the position players. The lineup would suffer, and he's acknowledged it. Kudos to him this offseason. So you got to keep doing something about it.
And let's be real. The Angels, they already know, based on the market right now for baseball in general, any contract, any big name player, the market is not what it was 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, not even 2 years ago. The market has changed. And with the generational talent that Shohei Ohtani brings, you already know his AAV is going to be at minimum 30 million, if not more so 35 to 40 million. The Angels, even though they haven't had those deep extension talks with Ohtani quite yet, you already know they're going to be in that ballpark, and they're kind of earmarking it for later because Ohtani's getting $30 million just to play 2023 with the Angels. 1 year, $30 million. That's what the Angels gave him to avoid arbitration and looking like idiots, taking him to court to negotiate his salary. So you already know $35 to $40 million per year moving forward is going to be in that realm for Shohei Ohtani. You have to get it right now because I know we keep saying don't hamstring the franchise and this, but once Ohtani, when the day comes, he signs on the dotted line and stays with the Angels for that amount of money, don't tell me, even with new ownership, maybe there'll be a slight hesitation and a big free agent over those 8+ years of Shohei Ohtani. There will be, don't worry, because Mike Trout will probably be tailing end of his career. Rendon will be coming to an end, and there'll be a new crop of talent coming into Major League Baseball. It's going to be very interesting to see where the state of the Angels is if and when they do sign Shohei Ohtani, because I think at that point, we're going to have new ownership at that point. The new ownership is going to sign Shohei Ohtani. It's not going to be Artie Moreno, barring a miracle, unless I'm drinking the Kool-Aid somewhere and Artie Moreno's not going to sell at this point. I think I might be stupid at that point.
It sounds like it really sounds like the process is going through.
Yeah. Even Rob Manfred, as we mentioned, was commenting about that at the winter meeting. So I think news will come out before opening day of this ownership change. Now, is all the paperwork and the full transition of Artie cleaning his desk, metaphorically speaking, and the new ownership comes in, going to be 100% done by opening day? Probably not. That's a lot of undertaking to do in a very small period of time. We're getting ready to go on the Christmas, New Year holidays soon enough. And then spring training, is just 2 months away. So to get all that done by spring training, by the time the team gets to Tempe, Arizona, would be nothing short of a Christmas miracle at this point. But it is going to happen. We don't know who. We don't know when. It's like that famous Liam Neeson quote,
I don't know who you are, or you don't know who I am. I don't know. It's like, but I will find you and I will kill you.
Exactly. So pardon the Liam Neeson fans that know that quote by heart. We're doing this on the fly here. But that is, honestly, that is the Angels organization right now. Don't know who you are. Don't know what you're doing, if that's the quote. But I am going to find you, and we will see better days moving forward, God willing, ... Like, that's what the Angels are right now. It's an incredibly funny thing to think of. There is, I feel at the end of the day, regardless of what we've talked about already so far in this podcast episode, there is definite hope with this Angels organization. We're not in a dark and dreary place where we know bad days are coming. It's just we're on that teeter-totter right now where we don't want to slip into bad habits. We want to get better. We don't want to keep relying on hope. We want results. We like hope and results. We don't just want hope. And I think that's where not only me, not only you, but I think every Angel fan is at that point or another.
Show us something.
Show me something. Exactly. I think no doubt about it. I think the Angels have done very well. Like, I think we both can agree. Solid B plus. You can make the argument for an A- off season so far.
I'd go a little bit lower. I'd go a little bit lower, and it has nothing to do with the moves they made. I think they're good moves. It's like I said, it's the competition. You have to hit the A.
It's a doggy. It's a doggy dog
to be
world.
positive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I give them like a B minus. If they went and signed the Carlos Correa, automatically an A.
Yeah. It's an easy flip of the switch. One move can turn this whole thing around.
It is.
And it's, weirdly enough, it's within the Angels' grasp. Nothing that they're doing is out of their grasp at this point. They could go out and get a Correa. They could, honestly, let's be real. Could they have gone out, and I'm not saying they were going to do this, but could they have paid for Aaron Judge? Probably. They have the money. They can go do it. It's a matter of want / need /
the player's got to want to play in California too.
That too. You have to take in the player's accountability at that point. And
the tax thing, it seems like Trey Turner wanted out of here ASAP.
100%. So you have to find the right fit. Again, it's a very convoluted mathematical equation of fit plus want plus need times relevancy. All of that goes in. Again, David and I think we can 100% agree on this, and God forbid if I'm wrong, we don't envy general managers trying to make the right fit. It is 100% a gamble. Everything in sports is a gamble. I don't care. You could pick the surefire pick, and it might not ball out at the end of the day. Thankfully for us, Ohtani and Trout have balled out. We are very lucky to have them on our roster right now, and they have come to play in their careers with the Angels. At the end of the day, circling back to the winter meetings and putting a nice Christmas bow on this one as we approach the holiday season, who are the winners and losers of the winter meetings? Everybody wants to know this because, starting on Monday, that's going to be what every beat writer starts writing about. Who is the winners? Who is the losers? So, David, I'll give you the floor first. Who is your winner and loser of this year's 2022 MLB Winter Meetings from San Diego?
For my winners, I do have a tie. That's why I said winners. I think the Padres and the Phillies both solidified their places at the top of the National League. And the Phillies especially needed help with Bryce Harper missing as much time as he will. So I think both those teams said, or they threw caution to the wind regarding payroll. And they said, we need to pay as much as we can to win now. So I would put those two as my winners. And then I would put the Red Sox as my loser, mostly because you just can't lose two franchise players in the span of like 5 years. That'd be like, if the Angels lose Ohtani, that would suck. But they didn't lose Trout. Can't be the team that loses Mookie Betts and Xander Bogaerts. Just can't. The two home guys who are perennial all-stars, they got to stay with your club.
The only thing I think that's surviving the Red Sox franchise right now is that both of those players went to National League teams, and the Red Sox do not see them as often. Now, remember, fans, the MLB schedule starting this season, everybody plays everybody at least once. You have less division games in order to make room for teams interleague from you. So guess what? There is going to be a road trip, and this is just, penny for your thought here at this point. But the Angels and their schedule, the end of August in 2023, the 25th through August 30th. Guess where the Angels road trip is? 6 games on the East Coast, 3 versus the Mets, 3 versus the Phillies. That's a single road trip right there, folks. And that's in the dog days of August.
Ouch.
Yeah, so it's going to be a very, interesting schedule now. Again, the Angels play everybody. So less divisional games, thankfully. That means less games against the Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers. But you're going to have high-powered teams you got to play, like the Padres 4th of July weekend, like the Phillies, like the Mets. It's going to be difficult. And I think that's the only caveat to the Boston Red Sox right there. They're glad Mookie Betts doesn't play them as if he was Aaron Judge in the Yankees. That, I think, would burn the Red Sox more. But with your winners and losers, I completely agree with you 100% of the way. I'm going to change it up just a little bit. just for the conversation's sake. Like I said, Phillies and Padres guaranteed 100% winners of this offseason. I will give a third winner in that case. And I'm going to say, based on my list, I'm going to give the New York Mets, because of the Brandon and Mo signing this evening as we record this podcast. They give him, again, 8 years, $162 million. They also got a reliever, David Robertson, 1 for 10. And let's not forget Justin Verlander rejoining his former teammate Max Scherzer in the Big Apple. Let's be real. Are the Mets done this offseason? Absolutely not. They're still going to pay. I think at the end of the day, when we arrive at spring training, my hope is that the Angels are the winners of of the offseason. But I think the Mets will, at the end of the day, be the winners of the offseason. And so far, I will give them a very nice grade as a winner of the MLB Winter Meetings this year in 2022. Loser, it's a tie for me. I know I'm going to be, going with low-hanging fruit here, but I'm going to go the San Francisco Giants and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Dodgers did nothing. They gave a minor league deal to Jason Hayward, the aged veteran that got cut from the Chicago Cubs. I don't know what that type of move is. I think it's just veteranship at that point. The Dodgers have a lot of holes to fill. They lost Trey Turner. They lost Justin Turner. They lost Cody Bellinger, who got signed with a very nice deal with the Cubs, one for 17.5 million. They have holes to fill. They didn't go after Judge like we thought they would. So it's an interesting market that the Dodgers are in right now. And the San Francisco Giants, they lost out on Aaron Judge. I'm sorry, John Heyman. He's another loser of the winter meetings. Judge.
He's the big loser of the winter meetings.
Aaron Judge, Coke Hamels. Sorry. I know this is via YouTube where we post all of our podcasts. This is a kid-friendly show, but he was one name away from the trifecta hat trick. All he needed was, instead of Trevor Bauer, Trevor Boner, away from making the trifecta of mispronunciation names, or as he said, mistyped names on his iPhone. But the Giants missed out on Aaron Judge. Yes, they did get Mitch Haniger, which they needed an outfield.
It's a nice signing.
It's a nice signing with Yastrzemski out in the outfield. The Giants still have a lot of holes to fill, especially losing Carlos Rodon, who we didn't even talk about in this episode. He's a potentially forgotten free agent pitcher that's at the top of a lot of people's lists, but you're not hearing a lot of rumors about. Maybe he goes back to the Giants. I highly doubt it after he opts out after 1 year with them. But the Giants and Dodgers have a lot of work to do. And right now, I think they are the biggest losers of the winter meeting.
They're one signing away from changing that, though. They always are.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of teams right now that you could consider losers, or maybe just middle of the road teams that are one signing away from becoming a bona fide contention conversation seeker. Like the Boston Red Sox, even though you had them as losers, they made good signings, and they are maybe one pitcher away, maybe even another bat away from being in contention with the Yankees and the AL East division. Who knows? It's a very wide open year. And I think with the new schedule format and the way the business of baseball is going right now, it is a wide open case for anybody to be atop of Major League Baseball right now. We have an idea of where it could be. But again, let's be real. Did we think the Philadelphia Phillies were going to go to the World Series and now be free agent contenders by getting Trey Turner? When the Angels played them at the beginning of June, they had just fired their manager and they were below 500. They went to the World Series. We fixed them. Thank you, Brandon Marsh and Syndergaard. Yeah. You never know what.
Well, I was talking about the Grand Slam, but that word, that's also. Yeah.
My bad. Spoiler alert. A little bit. But you never know with the game of baseball. It's extremely crazy. It's extremely funny at times. It is extremely heartbreaking at times. But at the end of the day, here's the Christmas bow, David. It will give you hope. And the Angels are giving us tons of hope right now. And we hope for more offseason moves for Perry Manassian. But that's going to put a bookend here on another episode of the Katella Chronicles podcast with your host, Dominick Lorenz, co-host David Goodkind, and all juicy things Winter Meetings 2022 / free agency with the State of the Angels in mind. As we said, a lot of work to be done. A lot of great insight from David today. I think this was a great episode. Lot of juicy meat stuff. This was if this episode was a steak, it was a very beautiful medium rare today.
Oh yes,
no doubt about it. I know since we cover Angels and Ducks here, I know there's a lot of things to talk about with the Ducks. We're going to get into that on our next episode for sure.
Regular season win or not regular season, sorry, regulation win. You know,
the Ducks have won in regulation. They've upset a very good team in the Eastern Conference recently. So maybe some positive hope coming from the Anaheim Ducks soon, but we will get that in future podcasts. Don't worry, Ducks fans. We have you on lock with that one, but it's baseball time of year right now with the winter meetings. So we had to jump on and get you all things winter meetings. But don't forget, fans, you can follow us, KatellaChronicles.wordpress.com, as well as social media channels at Katella_CHRON on Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube. This is where you can find all our podcasts. We also share an Anchor account on Spotify with our friends over at Halos in the Infield, so you can check us out as well. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe on this podcast. We love your comments. We love to dive into it, especially with the fans on social media as well. So come in, get involved, get familiar with David and I as we talk more Angels offseason baseball and Ducks hockey regular season. But for us here at Katella Chronicles, I'm Dominick Lorenz. That is David Goodkind. Until the next time, we are Katella Chronicles, and we are the heartbeat of pro sports in Anaheim.